My name is Isaac with Medieval Collectibles, and today we're exploring the Ornate Renaissance Colichemarde. Let's start with some neat history about this blade's origins, starting from the late 17th to the mid 18th century. This Colichemarde that I have here in my hands was designed to be, well, exactly what it looks like. A smaller, more agile version of the popular rapier, or longsword as it was called at the time. Like the rapier that came before it, this small sword was ideal for thrusting and stabbing, used predominantly in duels between nobles, merchants, politicians, and really anybody who could afford one in the early modern era. But it also saw action in major global conflicts like the 7 Years' War and the American Revolution. European and later Continental Army officers used to wear this as part of their uniform. The reason we don't see it as much among soldiers is that muskets and tomahawk-like weapons were more effective in pitched battles, and the tomahawk was a more effective tool in the North American wilds than the Colichemarde. But as time went on and duels were being fought to the death with these things all over the colonial world, it was given a reputation as the deadliest sword ever created apart from the rapier itself. And, as we'll see later, that reputation was well earned. Even George Washington, the first president, had several swords like these throughout his life. So, what makes up the Colichemarde and why does it marred? We can start by talking about this sword from the blade to the pommel and everything in between, discussing some practical influences behind the design. Starting with the best part about the blade, here we have a triangular carbon steel forged blade that has a broad forte and a longer, thinner foible at the tip. This bottom forte is longer than what a rapier would normally have, and that's by design, because this foible, by comparison, is much thinner and weaker. Thus, it needs this extra support if it's going to perform well in a duel. What's so interesting about this triangular blade, in fact, is this sort of faux fuller is not reflected on the other side, giving it its iconic triangular shape. Historically, this type of blade was excellent for pushing past clothes and coats. Like the rapier, this small sword is not so well suited against heavy armor, because by this point in history, armor was all but entirely phased out thanks to improving musket and cannon technology. You can certainly slash and cut with this, but it isn't its primary function. Kinda like how you can thrust with a saber, but you'll be at a serious disadvantage if you had to make the attempt in a fight. Unless you absolutely have to, you're usually not cutting with this thing if you were a European duelist. Interestingly enough, a curved version of this sword exists called the couteau, also known as a European hanger sword. That point about lack of slashing power that I mentioned earlier, think of the couteau as the ideal cutting version of the Colichemarde. See how small this guard is? Well, military historians and fencers both have differing interpretations of why this is the case. First off, this shell guard is only large enough to cover your knuckles and the top portion of your grip. See how flat it is too? Well, that makes for a perfect canvas for engravings and iconography. And on the other hand, a smaller guard means less weight to slow down your thrust and places more emphasis on the parry in fencing. This one is crafted from solid brass, but French and British designs also came in silver and steel. In fact, George Washington's steel-hilted smallsword that's preserved in George Washington's Mount Vernon collections has a shell guard that was hollowed out or perforated with brilliant flowery patterns. As you may have figured out, this guard is deliberately crafted to be small and lightweight so the sword can be faster and more accurate than your typical rapier. Check this out. There are little notches on the outside of this shell guard. Traditionally, taking away unnecessary amounts of steel or other materials in a sword not only made it lighter and slightly easier to wield, it opened up opportunities to improve the visual design. Anyone who is familiar with rapier styles and has experience with fencing probably recognizes the finger guards right here, and has probably seen a fencer place one or both fingers above the actual hilt because their style benefits from this form of control. If that is your style, you can see how easily and securely my finger can slip into the ring here. It's kinda like putting my finger on a gun trigger, or similar to modern pistol grips that you see with foil and épée fencing. However, these finger rings have sparked controversy in various historical weapon discussions. The common belief is that these finger rings are vestigial, not meant for an actual pistol grip, but meant for the duelist to simply rest their finger against. Yet, of course, it all depended on who you learned your style from during the age. Some people put their finger through the ring, some don't. Just know that you have that option when you're wielding this sword. As you can see, the grip itself is wood with spiraling double bands of brass wire going through it. They don't cut into your hand at all. They add style to your overall blade, and they reinforce the broader handle. Also, this spiraling band style was quite popular among the more decorated small swords. Usually they were just bare pieces of wood or wrapped leather. Washington's silver-hilted small sword, also kept by the Mount Vernon collection, used to have silver bands like this on top of the grip. And he reportedly wore it during the massacre of Jumonville Glen in 1754, that being the event that kickstarted the 7 Years' War between France, Britain, and their allies. He was probably wearing it during the surrender of Fort Necessity just 2 months later, too, as swords like these were incredibly common among lower-ranking officers like himself. Just like the silver-hilted small sword, this Colichemarde has a corkscrew-style knuckle bow that was popular among many European designs. Prominent sword makers from all across Europe would make stylish hilts like these to distinguish themselves from others in their craft, so to speak. But fascinatingly, most small swords had this straightened style grip that would later be replaced by longer, more rectangular French and Italian grips that we know of in modern fencing. Because many of these ornate swords were created with such a unifying design, our little friend here also has a stylish leaf-shaped piece at the bottom of the knuckle bow. It was common to see that, while not functional, these vestigial designs helped identify a sword and who was wielding it. Rounding out the design of this Colichemarde is the solid brass pommel with intermittent grooves in its design. I also like to call this kind of etching half-fluting, because fluting was the latest fashion for the time and is commonly attributed to European weapons and armor. Pommels are great for providing a sturdy, solid counterbalance to the blade. While making minor difference in your overall grip, it also makes sure that if there was no knuckle bow, your hand will stay in place during use. Not to mention, the button here at the very bottom really rounds out the brass details and is common among rapier styles as well. And as you can see, the pommel can rest against my wrist with no discomfort while I'm gripping the sword in a slightly bent way. I have almost complete control over the blade, and its weight makes it much easier to manage than the common rapier for the time. Come join me for a small fencing demonstration. As you can see, the on-guard stance is similar to foil and epee, but the small sword occupied a niche middle ground between a rapier and a saber. Seeing as how a lot of European cultures operated off reputation and respect, duels were overwhelmingly common, and several countries tried banning weapons like these quite a few times. But as gun technology gradually improved and fashion trends changed, wearing this sword as part of your attire was phased out completely by the early 1900s. If you remember from the beginning of the video, the triangular blade is primarily for thrusting, piercing, or parrying. But some stances actually have the blade closer to the center line where your offhand would actually be guarding your grip or holding a parrying dagger. Of course, this particular blade is unsharpened, making it perfect for slashing in sparring or for completing your reenactment costume or just showing it off in your collection. The brass details add a nice weight and resistance whenever you're practicing your skills at home or preparing for your next reenactment bout. Naturally, make sure that you're wearing the proper protective gear either way. Now, let's finish off by talking about the scabbard. You can tell how to properly sheath the blade because at the mouthpiece here is a little ridge that aligns with the triangular shape. Now that we've covered the blade and a little bit about its history, let's explore the leather-wrapped scabbard it comes with. As you can see, the brass fittings match the hardware on the blade. The throat here has a special mounting on the back that we can explore in a little bit. The leather wrapped around the wood core is real leather, seamed together for a nice snug fit around the protective wood lining. Further down, we have a matching set of suspension rings that can accommodate cord or chain so you can attach the scabbard to your sword belt. Back to the mounting right here, it can be easily attached to a hook or most display stands to really bring out an elegant and refined essence to your collection. Or, if you just want to hang it up on the wall for you to look at, the mounting here will be able to rest on your setup pretty well. Coming to the end of the scabbard, we see a nicely fitted chape with a button. This button is nice because if you can find a socket or a mount that will hold it, you can display it upright pretty much anywhere. With real leather, a wooden core, and sturdy brass fittings, you have a scabbard that will last. For nearly 3 centuries, the Colichemarde was the height of noble fashion and a deadly self-defense weapon for its time. But as guns became more accessible to the public and gradually shaped the future of warfare, the small sword's popularity would come to an end right before World War I. It became less of a weapon for self-defense and more of a decorative statement of social status. Other dueling blades that preceded modern epées would eventually replace this sword moving forward, but that doesn't mean you can't transport yourself back to the age of daring duels when you get this small sword. Thank you once again for joining me in breaking down this Colichemarde. Add it to your arsenal today from our website at medievalcollectibles.com, and don't forget to subscribe for more content in the future.